James 1, 1 through 4. James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes in the dispersion, greetings. Count it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when we meet trials of various kinds. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfected and complete, lacking in nothing. So imagine a group of people who have to leave their loved ones behind. Friends, family, hometowns that they grew up in, their jobs, their livelihoods, all because of their faith. They face many trials. They're trying to fit into a new environment. They're trying to fight against all the bias that's there. They're trying to make their ends meet. They're trying hard, and they're trying to figure out what the future holds for them. Now, do you know of groups like this? Do you know of people like this? Can you relate? Tell me. Can you think of some people who may be in this situation? Anyone? Anyone? Justin? Tell me, who?
Well, I mean, like missionaries that I've met.
Missionaries that you met? Okay. Anybody else?
Yazidis moved up into Syria.
Exactly. Okay. Anyone else? Hey, how about the Iraqi Christians? You know, they have Christians in Iraq. They had to flee Iraq because why? Because they're Islamic extremists, right? And they were being persecuted, and they're here in a new and strange setting, trying to survive. Right? And certainly, the churches that were dispersed in the New Testament are also these groups, right? And that's who James is writing to today. But actually, the group that I was describing is us at Gordon Conwell. Because for our faith, we also left our homes, our families, our friends, our careers, our lifestyle, and we find ourselves here in trying times. In some and in various ways, we're struggling academically, financially, relationally, and yes, even spiritually. And to us, this passage today is telling us, yeah, there are many trials, but there is joy in the testing of our faith. There are a lot of trials, especially when we're scattered and trying to live out our faith. This is why in verse 2 today, it doesn't say if, A, right, in Greek, A. It doesn't say if. It actually says otan, or when we meet trials of various kinds. Right? And boy, have we met some trials up here, right? It's actually been pretty trying being a student at Gordon Conwell. Right? Just the weather alone, right? It's been trying to just get adjusted to this wicked cold New England weather, right? And actually the people here who sometimes seems even colder. It's been trying as we were trying to make ends meet and trying to figure out how we're going to pay for our school and how we're going to pay down our loans afterwards while we're trying to keep up with the grades and to tithe. It's been trying to our relationships as we see and feel tension and arguments grow between us and our beloved better halves. It's been trying as we question whether we're turning into more negligent and angry parents to our children. It's been trying as we are sitting through summer grief while our families at home are suffering strokes and being diagnosed with cancer. It's been trying as we feel utterly alone in the midst of hundreds of fellow Christian brothers and sisters. It's been trying as we try to deny and hide our deepest, darkest secrets and shames and desires and addictions. So there are many trials, but there is joy in the testing of our faith. See, God tells us today in verse 3 that even though we do have many trials, that it's through these trials that our faith will be tested. And through that testing of our faith, it will produce steadfastness. In other words, patience or enduring faith. And this enduring faith is what will mature us and grow us as Christians. To grow us as Christians who are complete, more complete and perfect Christ, according to verse 4. And this word testing of faith in verse 3 is actually dokimian, the Greek word dokimian. And that has a very specific purpose when it's being used. And it's actually for the purposes of proving and refining. In fact, quite often through the Bible, when you see this word, it's actually being used in reference to the literal refining of metal. And refining of metal is like this, as you know. You get metal, and you melt it down. It's an incredible refiner's fire into this heat, so that it melts, and then you can separate all the impurities and let it burn away, so that all that you really have is the actual proven genuine metal that you're trying to reach. Okay? And to refine it in a way and for the purposes that you're going to use it for. And it's in the same manner that actually Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians 8:7, that he says, it's this kind of severe testing and proving of our faith through which joy and generosity could overflow from our lives. You see, I think that in some ways, most of and all of James following this is really about testing and proving and refining our faith in action in this letter. So let me hold up to you this ring. To me, it's the most precious ring. Well, right? Precious. This is my precious ring. But for my precious ring to exist, this gold and silver in it had to go through their own trials. It had to be ripped. They had to be ripped from the veins of caverns and chipped away by chisels, taken, transported, exchanged by many hands, none of which they had a choice in, right? And then it was heated up in this refiner's fire until it was melted, it was fused, it was forged, it was bent, and it was hammered into this particular form and size for my finger. The gold and silver in here did not ask for any of those trials, but they went through it, right? So that it becomes this complete and perfect ring for me. See, there are many trials, but there's joy in the testing. And this precious ring that I love so much is a source of great joy for me, because it also is for what it represents and reminds me. See, over 16 years ago on my wedding day, as I watched my beautiful bridesmaids walk up the aisle, you know what I did? I wept. I wept through the whole ceremony. I wept so much I had snot and tear coming out of my ears. And at the end of the ceremony, many guests came over and said, "Oh man, you must have been so happy. You must have been in so much love that you could cry like that." Well, if I were to be honest, I actually wept because the years leading up to that particular wedding day, for me, was the hardest and the most trying times I've ever experienced in my life. Everything I felt like was against our union. Our own Korean customs and laws forbid our marriage. My own father continued to threaten to disown me as a son. Her family thought that she could do much better, and they were right. Even our closest friends, after a while, seeing our struggle, thought, hey, maybe we should throw in the towel and just kind of give it up, move on, right? We were in different life stages. We were living across the continent from each other. There were many trials to which even my own precious bride doubted and questioned the possibility of our union. So it's only when God broke down all those barriers, cultural, relational, spiritual, geographical, all of those, and brought us to the altar, along with our family, along with our friends. Okay? Only then could I even allow myself, afford to even allow myself to weep and acknowledge and admit, man, that was hard. Those were trying times leading up to that wedding. But those trials, those very trials, tested and proved and refined our faith and our love and our conviction for each other. That's what this ring represents to me. There were many trials. Man, there were many trials. But there's joy in the testing of our faith. So we here at Gordon Conwell are going through struggles as well, through our own trials, right? And so the one thing that we really have to remember through this passage is that we do not go through these trials on our own, by ourselves. For the intent of this passage is to point out that we face these trials together as a community, right? I think Dave and Greg had already pointed out, several times in this book, or in this letter, it addresses the audience as in the plural, right? My brothers and sisters, not each one of you, but my brothers and sisters. And in fact, again, verse 1, this letter is addressed to the 12 tribes dispersed. So all of the intent here is really for us to realize it's not just suffering and being in trial by ourselves, but in a community of faith, right? As a community of faith, when we go through these trials together, our faith together is tested, proved, refined into an enduring faith that defines our community, that makes us even more perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. As is one body, as we go through these trials and are tested, we draw closer and closer to the image of Christ himself. Christ, who far more had been tried and tested throughout his life, onto the cross, onto death, and then he was proven and completed through his resurrection and his ascension. There are many trials, but Lord, there's joy in the testing of our faith. So, what does rejoicing in our trials look like? I mean, what does being happy or being joyful during our trials look like? Should we literally dance and laugh because we love our trials? Man, I love my trials. Have you seen my trial? It is so awesome. Give it to me. I need more. Give it to me. Give me Jesus. Just give it to me more. I can take this. I can take this. No, that's disingenuous. You can't pretend that you like the trials. We don't like trials. We call them trials because we don't like them. They make us feel bad. They S-U-C-K, right? So if we're not called to rejoice and be joyful for the trials we meet, what are we being called for? Well, we're supposed to count it all joy, not because of the trials, but what God can and will do through those trials. See, there are many trials, but there's joy in the testing of our faith. Now, Mike did a great job already explaining to us from James 5:7, right, about the farmer. So, as you know now through that sermon, how hard it is for a farmer to farm, right, and to grow his crop, right? Let me just remind you again, James 5:7 says, "Be patient therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and the late rains." See, I think showing joy during our times of trials is more like this. It's being patient in our hopes as we live out our lives, knowing what is to ultimately come. That's what this farmer is doing, right? This farmer is waiting, but waiting doesn't look like this. Not now, honey. I'm waiting for the rain. Kids, I'll get to that later. I'm waiting for the rain. Oh, yeah. We'll have Ben and Mary Beth over after the crops. That's not what it looks like, right? Waiting and hope and joy, it actually looks like this farmer who is not only planted and is waiting for the rain, is preparing for the rain, and then doing all the things that needs to happen after the early rain and after the late rain. And he goes about living his life fully while he's waiting, loving his wife, caring for his children, helping his neighbors. See, it's kind of like when we get on an airplane. When everybody's on board and we put on our seatbelts, right? And the airplane finally takes off. It gets to a certain cruising altitude, right? We're actually waiting at that point for the seatbelt sign to go off and for the pilot to come on and announce, you are free to move about your cabin, right? Knowing that we're already well on our way to where we're going. Feel free to move about our cabin. Feel free to move about and live our lives freely wherever that we are dispersed. You know why? Because there are going to be many trials, but there's always joy in the testing of our faith. Now, there was another community, another group of people in the Bible who were scattered because of their beliefs, because of their faith. And that was the exiled Israelites in Babylon, right? And so God says this to them through Jeremiah chapter 29. He says, stop wasting your time longing for the past. Oh, Israel, when am I going to get back? Should we go back now or not? And stop being so unsure about the future and being so unwilling to live your life where you are. And so he says this to them. Take wives and have sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, that they may bear sons and daughters. Multiply there, do not decrease. But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you. And pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in it, the city that I sent you, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. And we should do all this because we have this knowledge and this hope of what God assures us in verse 11, which is that his plans for us are for good, not for evil, to give us a future and a hope. Right? God's will for us in our diaspora is to face our trials together as a community and live together fully where we are scattered. So for us, what does that look like? Well, it certainly means much more than just studying together and going to chapel together, I think. Right? We should be really building long-lasting, intimate relationships and friendships here while we're here in this diaspora community. Right? We should be serving local churches together, doing ministry together, right, as committed, active members. We should share and serve together our local communities, our local towns, for their welfare. Whether that be wrestling, coaching a wrestling team in high school, or being a big brother or a big sister. Hey, maybe we work at some of the local businesses. Or, bless you, or cook a warm meal and deliver it to a homebound elderly. Right? Maybe living together also means that we pray together, right? For Arlington, for Hingham, for Hamilton, for North Shore, for New England. Maybe together also means that we, every once in a while, invite a fellow student that we don't know to join us at our table in the cafeteria while we have lunch. Maybe it's more about not obsessing over our grades and what we're going to get as an Asian, okay? But actually caring enough to stop and saying, how are you doing? No, how are you really doing? How are you really doing that? And then for us to walk with and alongside and pray for our fellow family members as we walk with them in their trials. To make your trial my trial. To make my trial your trial. To make our trials our trials. I'm so sorry, I'm feeling for you.
I'm feeling for you too, man. That's really annoying, man. You really need to stop that.
So, and here's one more thought. So if you are, if you've been hesitant or on the fence, you're trying to think, well, maybe I should wait until I'm done with the trials of school first and I'm more certain about the future. You know, the message I think from God to us today is to know that we have many trials. There will always be many trials. But have hope. Take joy. If you were thinking about but you're on the fence, go ahead. Have your children now. If you're thinking about it and been on the fence, go ahead. Marry your sweetheart while you're in this community. Because we are always being called to a life of diaspora here, right? Because where is our home? Our only real ultimate home is with the Father. And until that day that he calls us home, we are called to live out our lives fully here, wherever and with whoever and whenever he calls us to. Right now, we're in a diaspora community called Gordon Town. Right? But very soon, sooner for some of us than others, right? We are going to be scattered again. Perhaps to Lexington, Massachusetts, or Dubai. Maybe among the business people or among the soldiers. We don't know, but the thing that we know for sure is that wherever we may be, many troubles there will be, right? Many trials there will be. Right? But we, even today, could rejoice as a community. Why? Knowing that when our faith is tested and proven and refined, as a community here through our trials, it will produce enduring faith, steadfastness, that will equip us and ready us to face even more trials. I hate to say it, even more trials wherever we go for our next Yes Work community. There will be many trials. Yes, many trials to come. But know that there is always joy